On Thursday, TNA kicked off what was supposed to be a brand new era with the first weekly show on AMC. This should have been a historic night and a major turning point for a company that has struggled for years to regain relevance and trust by the fans. Instead, they did the most typical TNA thing possible and just failed it. It came across as a complete failure and nowhere near the success TNA has hoped for or needed. In this video, I will be talking about the debut episode and what made it a failure that cost TNA, in my opinion at least, the lost goodwill with a couple of fans that have left. The biggest issue going into the show was the complete lack of promotion hype. The road to the AMC debut felt strange, disorganized, and simply just irrelevant. There was no real buzz, no sense that something important was about to happen, as the announcement kind of came just out of nowhere. And part of this, of course, comes from TNA fans or fans outside of TNA just simply not trusting TNA anymore when it's about a big announcement or big changes. We've seen that when they changed from Impact to TNA, people were turning in, oh my god, this is going to be the big show, and the show was whatever, and people just gave up after it. It also happened in Slammiversary when everyone was like, oh my god, all the hype around TNA is now there with WWE, and they just flopped it as well. So who can really blame the fans? There's little to no excitement heading into the show. So TNA needed to work hard to give the fans a reason to be hyped, but they didn't do that. Things got even worse in the final days leading up to the debut, as Jake Something and the Rascals, so Desmond Xavier, Myron Reed, Trey Miguel, and Zachary Wentz all signed with All Elite Wrestling at the worst possible time for TNA. That alone hurt, as they are both, or all five of them, are some of the best workers that TNA has in the male division. But the way TNA handled it made the company look even worse, unprofessional, and kind of even a joke. Myron Reed had been announced to face Leon Slater in an AMC debut, but once it became clear that the Rascals were free agent, the match was quietly dropped without any explanation or acknowledgement. It was just never mentioned again. Myron now is in AEW. For Lee and Slater, we come to that later. It just came off, in my opinion, as sloppy and unreliable. Why should fans bother if you just pull a match like that out of nowhere and just don't even give the fans a reason why that is happening? The biggest miss of the entire night, however, was not putting Leon Slater front and center. This was a new TV deal, a new audience, and the biggest spotlight TNA has had for years on a weekly show. And Leon Slater, in my opinion, is clearly the best wrestler, the franchise player, and the guy new fans instantly can point at it and say, hey, look, he is the guy, because he's incredible inside the ring and outside the ring. He's literally the guy TNA choose to put into a segment with AJ Styles' Bound for Glory when AJ made his big return to TNA after years. If there was ever a night for a show to be around Leon Slater, this was it. Instead, TNA needed to pull Leon Slater off the show due to visa issues, as was reported by Sean Rossap of Fightful later on, and Leon instead worked SmackDown and faced Callum Hayes there in a WWE United States title match during the arguably most important week the company has had in years. As a result, he missed the AMC debut episode as well as the pay-per-view Genesis that is happening on Saturday. From business perspective, this just sucks for TNA, and you gotta, as TNA, make sure that this guy has his visa ready for the show. Of course, I don't want to play fully TNA with that because we never know how visa things are going, especially in troubleful times in the United States right now. For Leon Slater on the other side, I think him not being part of the show is honestly the best thing that could have happened, as he instead had a great outing on SmackDown and is likely sooner or later going to sign with WWE once his deal is up with TNA. Everything that happened in the days leading up to the show should have made it crystal clear that this TNA episode had to deliver not just a good show, but a show that actively hooks viewers who either haven't watched TNA in years or were turning in for the first time on the AMC debut. Given the circumstances, there was no room for a decent episode. This needed to be a statement, in my opinion, and unfortunately, even the announced card didn't really inspire much confidence, in my opinion. On paper, the lineup consisted of an AJ Styles appearance in 6-man tag team match with Elijah and the Hardy Boys against Order 4, the Knockout World Tag Team title match between the Inspiration and Elegance brand, and the TNA World title match in the main event between Frankie Kazarian and the challenger, Mike Santana. To me, as someone who watches a lot of wrestling, I can, watch everything. It didn't really scream like a can't miss television show on paper. That said, you should never fully judge a wrestling show by its card. The episode opened with an AJ Styles promo, and while it was the most generic TNA is great promo imaginable that we have seen thousands of times across multiple companies over the last few years, it still worked. It set a positive tone, in my opinion, for the entire show, even if it just lasts 2 or 3 minutes. But AJ Styles, a name many people know, even if they haven't watched TNA first, he comes out to say, hey, look, this is the place we build and everything. It was a cool opener. Still, personally, I would have tried to get Styles involved in something more meaningful, whether that be a match or a stronger on-screen role. Instead, he was limited to a short promo at the beginning and a couple of brief backstage interactions with Frankie Kazarian and Mike Santana ahead of the world title clash. That said, TNA probably had to bend over backwards just to get him there on the show in the first place. So I can understand why they accepted that his involvement was just minimal. The opening match on the show was a solid 6-man tag team match between Order 4 and the Hardys alongside Elijah, but this is where the first major issue of the night became super obvious. And that problem was carried through the entire goddamn show. Well, no, through the entire existence of TNA even. The dominance of former WWE talents was just so overwhelming, and it was so annoying. The show was absolutely flooded with ex-WWE wrestlers. In fact, it wasn't until the main event match of the show between Frankie Kazarian and Mike Santana that we finally got a full segment without any former WWE talent involved in some way. And to be completely honest, in theory, having ex-WWE wrestlers isn't a big bad thing at all. They're wrestlers like anyone else, and if they're good, there's no reason to not use them, right? The problem is which former WWE wrestlers TNA choose to feature heavily. The roster spotlight was filled with talents that fans see as past their primes, uninteresting, and simply not good. The Hardy Boys, Elijah, Ash by Elegance, the Inspirations. None of these names feel fresh and exciting in 2026. Instead, the show played directly into the long-standing stereotype people have about TNA, where the company is just overloaded with aging former WWE wrestlers who add very little to the product. Pretty much what I think people have been pointing out about AEW between 2023 and 2024 a lot. But here, it was pretty much the same issue, just worse, with even worse talents that AEW had at some point. And I think that AEW really got the curve there. TNA is pretty much going straight into it by even signing more. As we come to the next point, as after a generally awful Ryan Nemeth segment with Mara Shade, I love Mara Shade, no shot against her, Ryan Nemeth is just bad. Santino Marella was in the ring and introduced Daria Ray, the former Sonya Deville, as the new on-screen authority figure helping management in some kayfabe role. She cut a short babyface promo before revealing herself as a heel, setting up what looks to be some kind of heel versus fate on-screen personality feud with Marella. And that is just the last thing TNA reads right now. Daria Ray herself could be a good signing. She has a presence, charisma, a good look, and I like her promos. But the way she was introduced strongly suggests that she won't be wrestling much, if she even wrestles at all, which makes the signing just fairly meaningless in my opinion. It's just hard to care and hard to bother. The next signing announcement, however, mattered for more. Daria revealed that she had signed a new knockout, and the music of Elena Black hit as the former Cora Jade made her return to pro wrestling after a hiatus. And honestly, Elena's signing was one of the more positive moments of the night. She's gotten a lot of unnecessary hate over the last couple of years, and in my opinion, she's a solid wrestler who can have good matches with the right opponent. She's a fun performer at points, And TNA feels like the perfect place for her. She can test herself in bigger spots without overwhelming pressure, while still being on TV. And I think that is the best budget she can have right now in wrestling, because I don't think she's made yet for AEW or WWE. Of course, she got fired here, and I think she should do more than just the indies. Until then, the show was okay-ish, but somehow the worst was still yet to come. Things completely went off the rails once the Elegance brand came to the ring, together with Paris Hilton. Yes, Paris Hilton in big 2026. At that point, I genuinely didn't know what to expect. But whatever expectations I had were far too generous. I expected a bad segment, but I got one of the worst segments I've seen in years. After an absolutely awful promo, the Elegance brand revealed Mr. Elegance. And I was just baffled. Seeing this guy pointed to the screen as like a really overweight, out of shape dude, and then it's like in the ring, he's posing there with his six pack. He's like, oh yeah, after a week I looked at it, I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? What is that? Who the hell approved this to make it onto television, especially on a night that was supposed to introduce TNA to a new audience? This wasn't just bad, it was embarrassing. If I have never seen wrestling before this, I would have turned off and would have watched Love Island instead. That is how fucking bad this was. I was baffled by this. Thankfully, Cassidy and Jesse McKay interrupted to transition into the Knockouts World title match. But even that could have saved the segment. The match itself was just terrible. The Elegance brand ended up winning the belts in a bout that featured more interferences than every House of Torture match in 2025 combined. Nobody came out of this looking better. Nothing was elevated, and genuinely felt like a complete waste of time. As a viewer, I gained nothing watching from this except for wasting my time. Fightful then posted that Cassie Lee and Jesse McKay are now freelancers, are likely going to leave TNA, so that makes it like 8 or 9 talents left the promotion in the last week. You should ask yourself, as a TNA fan, what they are doing with the money getting from the TV deal, because seemingly it's not re-signing the talents that they have right now. So there's that. I don't know what Cassidy and Jesse McKay are going to do. Maybe they will come back down the road. I don't know. In another in-ring segment, it was announced that late Jing Lee will defend the Knockouts Championship at Genesis against Zarya, as Danny Luna is unable to compete on the show due to visa issues. Honestly, this was one of the best things coming out of the entire show, outside of the AJ Styles appearance. It was simple, logical, and I thought the Saruka could have probably making it seem like, okay, she's going to challenge and say, no, it's going to be Zarya. Was a really cool moment for NXT fans. But which is funny that one an NXT lore thing is one of the highlights in the TNA show, but you know what? Whatever. I think it gave fans something to look forward to without any unnecessary nonsense attached to it. I think Zarya versus Lee should be a fun match. After that, we got a segment with the system to build up JDC's retirement match. And they clearly tried to go for something emotional here, but it completely fell flat. The crowd just did not care at all about this. Eddie cut a promo, kind of like, you are my friend, and everything like that. It was like, the crowd was like, what? They chanted what the entire time. And I was like, what chance during a promo to build up a retirement match? You gotta know how much the fans really care about it if that happens. And when JDC spoke, directions were just quiet and awkward instead of how it felt. It felt like forced, disconnected, and painfully obvious that the audience just didn't care in the story TNA was trying to tell here at all. And it was kind of sad to see. I'm not a big Fandango fan at all, but I feel like he deserves much, much better for his last real segment before his retirement match in this. Before the main event, things somewhat got even more awkward. Carlos Siva, the president of TNA, came out and introduced Dixie Carter, and she was immediately booed out of the building. And honestly, who can even blame the crowd there? She's one of the big reasons TNA is ending in the position they are right now and is trying to crawl out of this position for years. Bringing it out on a show that is supposed to be a fresh start on a new network was unbelievably tone deaf from TNA. It feels like, okay, Carlos Silva was trying to sit backstage. Okay, what can we do? We need to create moments. We are Texas. How about we bring out Dixie Carter? It's not like no one backstage was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think our fans like her. Like, what are we doing here? Is this just trying to create stuff out of sheer desperate? I don't know. This promotion is so bad. It's baffling. And to their credit, they seemingly realized that they were in trouble because Bully Ray came out during the middle of the promo of Dixie Carter, and it felt like much earlier than expected, and they hugged and kind of salvaged the situation a little bit. They instantly shifted the segment by announcing that he would be on commentary for the main event, and his appearance got the crowd react positive again and stopped them just booing Dixie Carter. So that was the least there. Still, the damage was already done. What was felt like a nostalgic moment. It became just another reminder of the past failures this promotion has had. The entire thing came off as unintentionally hilarious and perfectly summed up the entire night TNA has had so far. Bad timing, bad judgment, and a complete disconnect between what TNA thought the fans want and what the fans actually wanted. Then we had the main event, as Mike Santana won back the TNA World Championship from Frankie Kazarian in a match that was confusing, messy, and underwhelming. The match started well with solid wrestling, good pacing, but then just completely fell apart. Ref bumps, title shots, botch counts by the referee, and clear miscommunication took over, and what should have felt like a big emotional moment instead turned like awkward chaos to end the night. To be completely fair, the match achieved what TNA wanted, and that is getting back the championship back on Santana. Regardless how anyone feels about his talent and how anyone feels about him as a main event player, that was totally the right call. Santana should be one of the faces of the company, especially heading into a new TV era. The problem just is how it was done. And this is something that always happens in wrestling. The second big moment never feels as special as the first one. And TNA completely failed at recreating the hype and excitement around Santana here. The title win just completely felt flat. It didn't feel earned, it didn't feel hot, and it certainly didn't feel like the launch of a strong championship run. Honestly, it just would have felt like a bigger deal if Santana would have walked into the show already as champion. And another issue is, and that is going to be the issue with the run of Santana, he has literally no opponents. He has now defeated Kazarian. He's going to face Kazarian to take this away in a rematch. Outside of what is the main event scene in TNA? Moose? Eddie Edwards? The Hardys? Okay, Mustafa Ali would be cool, at least. What are we doing here? This main event scene in TNA is terrible. And I'm going to feel bad for Santana because he's going to try to really revive this world title scene on his very own because he's not going to get much help from the partners that he's going to feud with. After the match, TNA tried to shoot an angle, but due to time constraint, it happened off the air. That angle set up a rematch between Kazarian and Santana in the Texas Death Match, and when Marella announced this match, the crowd just booed, which was also just hilarious. Like, you saw this match and was like, nah, we don't want to see more of that. Nick Nemeth is going to be the special referee for this match, as he also has the Call My Shot Gauntlet title thing where he can just can get the title shot for any belt, anytime, and they will be trying to tease him, cashing him either in the match or after the match. The absurd part about all of this is this match is the main event of one of the biggest TNA pay-per-views of the year on Saturday. It's literally today or tomorrow. And it wasn't actually shown or presented on the big debut episode of AMC. World-class TNA. That decision is just almost comical. On the night where TNA desperately needed to sell viewers on what is coming next, they rushed off the air fast before fully establishing the main event of a major pay-per-view. It's a perfect example of how poorly thought out this entire show was. Instead of ending the night with momentum, excitement, and a reason to turn in next week, TNA just closed their network debut with confusion, mistiming, and just the main event for the next pay-per-view nobody wants to see. Overall, this was a massive failure of a show. TNA had months to put together an episode that would appeal to people who have never watched TNA before, or fans like me who haven't followed the TV shows in months. And somehow they failed at doing either, to the point where it's just honestly baffling how bad it was. There was barely any wrestling on the show, and what we got wasn't good. The moments clearly felt manufactured and either didn't work at all or just landed with a thud, and everything came across as awkward, poorly thought out, or just outright bad. Nothing felt natural, exciting, or just important. The best way I can describe the show as was similar to the first Raw episode on Netflix, but without WWE's production, without WWE's roster, without any of WWE's star power. Strip away all of that, and what you're left with is exactly what this show was. A boring to bad wrestling show that offered absolutely nothing compelling. By the end of the night, there was not a single damn thing that made me feel like I need to turn in next week again. No hook, no momentum, no sense of any kind of direction. And for a company debut on a new network, supposedly entering a new era, that's about as big of a failure as it gets. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like and comment down below. Let me know how you felt about the TNA show on AMC. Will you turn into TNA next week? With that, bye bye.